Carlos Bierce's innovative 1890 short story, An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, is a forerunner of the literary technique called stream of consciousness, which emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries that emphasizes the conveyance of characters' internal states by reproducing the flow of characters' thoughts through perceptions, emotions, and reactions. A character's thoughts and feelings may leap around in time and space, blending the real and the imaginary by including fragments of passing impressions, memories, or dreams. The story opens with a man standing on a railroad bridge in Alabama during the Civil War. He's a civilian, about 35 years old. His hands are tied. There's a noose around his neck. Union federal soldiers have prepared him to hang. A soldier guards each end of the bridge. Beyond the stream, a company of infantry soldiers watches the scene. The two privates standing directly beside the condemned man step back. The sergeant salutes the captain and stands behind him. The sergeant's weight now holds down the board the condemned man is standing on. When he steps away from the board, the man will drop down and hang to death. The man who's about to hang looks down at the stream moving slowly below him and thinks about his family. He hears a metallic pounding, getting louder and louder, and realizes it's his ticking watch. He imagines getting free and somehow making it home to his wife and children. As he thinks these things, the sergeant steps off the board and lets him fall. The story then flashes back to how the condemned man ended up on the bridge. The man's name is Peyton Farquhar. He's a Southern planter who owns slaves and supports the Confederacy's secessionist cause. Circumstances prevented him from joining the Confederate Army, but he wishes he could because he feels he's a soldier at heart. He wants to do whatever he can to help their cause. One evening, a man dressed as a Confederate soldier comes to Farquhar's property and asks for a drink. While Mrs. Farquhar gets him some water, the man says the Union Army is fixing the railroads and preparing to advance again. They've taken a position at the Owl Creek Bridge. They've announced that anyone who interferes with the bridge, railroad tracks, or trains will be hanged. Mr. Farquhar asks what one man could do to the bridge. The soldier says the previous winter left a lot of dry wood nearby, which could be used to burn the bridge. Mrs. Farquhar returns to give the man his water. He drinks, thanks her, and leaves. A little while later, the man passes the plantation again, heading north. He isn't really a Confederate soldier at all, but a Union scout. The story jumps back to the present, just after the sergeant steps off the plank. Peyton Farquhar passes out as he falls straight down. He then feels himself wake up, later in intense pain in his neck that moves through his whole body. He can't think well. He can only use his senses to attempt to grasp what is happening. He hears a loud splash and a roaring, and suddenly he can think again. He realizes the rope around his neck broke. He's underwater and sinking in the river. His hands hurt, and Farquhar realizes he's trying to wrestle free from the rope binding them. The rope breaks. His hands tear at the noose around his neck without any conscious decision, and he pulls it free. When he breaks the water, the sunlight blinds him and he screams. Farquhar now feels and sees everything around him, such as plants and insects in vivid detail, and then sees the soldiers. They point at him. He hears a sudden sound and feels a bullet hit the water near his face. The swirling water takes Farquhar the other way. He hears the soldiers chanting orders and knows it means an officer has taken command of the situation. Farquhar hears the order for the whole company to fire, and he dives deep underwater. He hears and sees the bullets move through the water, some of which graze him. Farquhar resurfaces to breathe and realizes the stream is taking him the other way from the soldiers, toward safety. The soldiers are still firing but fail to hit him. He swims on. Then he feels a tremendous splash near him and realizes they've fired a cannon at him. The stream suddenly spins him around and around until everything seems to blur together into nothing but a swirl of colors. The water deposits him on the stream's south bank, behind a point that partially shelters him from the soldiers. He's overjoyed to be on solid ground again. Farquhar touches the sand and gravel on the bank. The entire world seems beautiful. The plants seem like something he'd see in a garden. The light is wonderful and the wind sounds as lovely as celestial music. A blast of grape shot from the cannon disrupts this perfect scene, and Farquhar gets up and runs away into the woods. He can't find any breaks or trails in the forest. He can't understand how the country where he lives is so untamed. Farquhar must find his way using the sun to guide him. Night comes. Farquhar is tired and starving. He can only keep going by thinking of his beloved wife and children. Finally, he stumbles across a road, broad and straight, with no signs of anyone on it. There are no houses or fields nearby. Trees line it like walls. When he looks up, Farquhar sees strange stars overhead. He He hears odd noises from the woods, including someone whispering in languages he doesn't know. Farquhar's neck hurts. Even though he's suffering, Farquhar keeps walking, sleeping as he continues down the road. He suddenly comes to and finds himself standing in front of the gates to his home. The morning sun is shining. He thinks he must have walked all night. He passes through the gate and sees Mrs. Farquhar coming down from the veranda to greet him. She's smiling, and he leaps forward with his arms open to hug her. Suddenly, just as he's about to embrace her, he feels a blow on his neck and sees an intense white light. Everything goes dark and silent. All of this had been a vision in the brief moments between when he fell and when he died. Peyton Farquhar's dead body is hanging from Owl Creek Bridge from a noose. As the story opens, Bierce provides a few markers to indicate the story's time and place, but leaves most of the situation unexplained. This opening creates a mystery and generates possibilities. Who is this man? What did he do? Why is he in this position? Decades before Bierce wrote this story, Edgar Allan Poe had published The Telltale Heart. Critics often group Poe and Bierce together because of their dark themes, their interest in abnormal psychology and strange circumstances, and their inclusion of unreliable narrators. The symbol of Owl Creek Bridge is important enough to the story for Bierce to include it in the title and the story's first line. A man stood upon a railroad bridge in northern Alabama, looking down into the swift water 20 feet below. Bridges are common symbols in dreams and art. Because of where they're located, crossing rivers or ravines, bridges symbolize change. To cross a bridge is to move from one place, literally or metaphorically, to another, symbolizing characters making a journey or crossing a boundary. Farquhar, a man about to be executed, is crossing the boundary from life into death. When he attempts to escape the horror of his execution by shifting from reality to a world of fantasy, it is significant that he floats as far away from the bridge as possible. At the end of the story, it turns out Farquhar is still on the bridge, from which his dead body swings. Farquhar only actually moves a few feet through the entire story, the length of the rope from which he's hanging. But it feels like he's taken a harrowing journey that lasts through an entire night into the next morning. When Farquhar asks about the Owl Creek Bridge, he betrays a damning lack of knowledge of his own surroundings. Farquhar's ignorance foreshadows his doom. Bierce recognized the importance of knowledge. In a letter he wrote in 1911, he stated, "To feel rightly, one must think and know rightly." The road is a symbol that represents a path through life, or the metaphorical direction one's life will take. Choosing which road to take represents choosing one's destiny. Farquhar emerges from a forest to wander down a road, but the road shows no signs of human habitation. While it provides Farquhar with a vantage point from which he can see the stars, they look unfamiliar, even threatening. The road is a figment of Farquhar's imagination, and so is the home to which he returns. His journey on the road has a different meaning for Farquhar. It leads him to death. Owl Creek is a key symbol in the story too. Rivers act as boundaries, dividing one portion of land from another, and waters are continuously moving and changing. Often crossing a river symbolizes moving from one realm to another. In Greek mythology, the dead must cross a river to reach the underworld. Moving water symbolizes moving between reality and the world of imagination. When Farquhar imagines that the noose has broken and he's dropped into the creek below, its waters allow him to escape and return home, if only in his mind. In Greek mythology, an owl accompanied Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and since that time, owls have symbolized wisdom. For many cultures, owls are associated with the supernatural or mystical world, including the underworld, the home of the dead. The enduring appeal of the story is not just its twist ending and trailblazing style, but its powerful themes. Many of Bierce's stories deal with the nature of war, often contrasting the glorious vision that men have of going to war with its painful reality. Bierce participated in some of the Civil War's bloodiest battles and was severely wounded, personally witnessing war's brutal, disgusting reality. An occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge exposes Farquhar's assumptions about war by ruthlessly revealing his unrealistic expectations about becoming a war hero. It's relatively easy to focus on one side of war, to paint a romantic, idealistic picture of its glories, or to provide a dark, cynical view of it, as Bierce himself did in other stories. This story smoothly integrates both sides of this complex reality. The theme, perception versus reality, highlights the tension between perception and reality. Like Farquhar, readers may also feel unsure at times of what's real versus what is merely the perception of reality all throughout the story. In the story's flashback, Farquhar cannot see past the Union soldier's disguise as a Confederate soldier. He mistakenly takes the man's uniform as visual proof of his identity, which causes him to fall for the man's deceptive suggestion that the Owl Creek Bridge can be burned. In the end, as Farquhar makes his way back to his home, there are many visual clues that should indicate he's no longer in a real landscape, but instead in a figment of his own imagination. The mistaken perception of coming home is tragic because it's revealed as an imaginary moment of pure wish fulfillment crushed under the ultimate reality, death. Finally, the desire for autonomy manifests itself through Farquhar's desires. The entire story takes place either with Farquhar bound by invading soldiers, thinking back on the circumstances that kept him from enlisting, or hallucinating his escape in the short time it takes for him to be hanged. He stands waiting for his death, wishing he could escape and see his family again. Farquhar wishes he could play an active role in the war, but cannot for reasons that are undisclosed. In the end, he wishes he would die through being hanged and drowned rather than shot, which is not something over which he has control. At the very close of the story, he reaches forward to embrace his wife, only to jerk to his death by hanging. Farquhar can't ever successfully act on his desires.